Welcome to the Learning Zone with Miss Beachley, Miss Hall, and Miss Bates.
Hey Farman Scholars, just a reminder, today's Crazy Hat Day, or any hat day. So get your hat and come join us for learning today. I'm ready. Hi Farman Scholars. So we today are going to be using our summaries from yesterday to identify the characters and their points of view. We're going to do this after doing our phonics practice. You're going to watch this instructional video. You're going to go into that second read of Grace for President. You're going to do a respond to reading question. Then I am going to assign an exit ticket for today. It will be very short. And then let's make sure we're getting in that 15 minutes of iReady reading practice if it is available to you. So as I said, we're going to be reading our second read of Grace for President, and we're going to be talking about point of view. The first point of view I want to talk about is the author's point of view. So stories can be written in 3 different points of view. We have first person, second person, and third person. First person is told by a character in the story. They use words like I, me, we. And second person, you have the narrator addressing the reader, such as when they use words like you would see or you would know, your or yours. And most often what we read is work written in third person, which is told by a narrator who is not in the story. They say things like he, she, or the names of characters, like Grace for President. We're going to go into our second read today of Grace for President, which means that we're reading really to understand that vocabulary, text structure, and point of view. We're marking up that text, we're looking at the unknown words and the important vocabulary, and we're completing any text-dependent questions or working in a graphic organizer if we have one available to us. So this is just a little review from yesterday. Yesterday we wrote a summary. Yesterday we wrote a summary about the story Grace. Okay, so this is little bit of review from yesterday. We have our summary for Grace for President. We said that the somebody was Grace Campbell, and Grace Campbell wanted to be the first female president of the United States. But Thomas said he could do a better job than Grace at being president and ran against her. So Grace had to work harder to campaign by making speeches and promises, and then Grace received more votes than Thomas and won the election. So who was telling this story? Was it a narrator? Was it a person? Was Grace telling the story? And who were they telling it about? Well, it wasn't Grace telling a story about Grace. It was a narrator who was telling a story about Grace, and the narrator wasn't in the story, which if we go back to our anchor chart, that means that this is a third-person story. But what we're also going to get in today is the points of views of different characters. We know that point of view can be talking about the way that the author writes the story and shares the events in the story, if they're using first, second, or third person point of view. We can also use point of view to discuss the way that the characters are feeling about the events happening in the story. Today, I want to show you a way to create a web or a mind map in your journal. So as you're completing that second read, you can think about what is that character feeling about the events in the story, and therefore what is their point of view. So I'm going to model for you how I would make a mind map for the character Miss Barrington. And as I'm doing that second read, I'm going to think about what are her thoughts? What is she thinking? What are her actions? And what are her words? And as I read, I can take notes under these 3 categories So I've mapped out while I did my second read of Grace for President what I thought were Miss Barrington's thoughts, words, and actions while I was reading. And most of this I get right from the text. So for example, at the beginning of the story, she put up a poster of all the presidents of the United States. So I took some notes there and wrote that down. She tells Grace that we've never had a female president. And then she invites the other class to participate in the election. This was an action of hers. It's something she did. And at the end of the story, she even announced that Grace was the winner. Now, what's really interesting to me about this story is even though it wasn't written in first person, where there is a character who is telling the story and using words like I, me, my, that we still get some insight into Miss Barrington's thoughts, because there's a part in the story where the author uses speech to say that I think that's a star-spangled idea. Miss Barrington said that when Grace was talking about running for president. So I didn't even have to infer what Miss Barrington might be thinking. The text gave me some clues about what she was thinking during this time as well. Sometimes with different characters, you might have to infer what they're thinking by using the pictures or using other words that they say. So now that I've mapped everything out, I can start to think about what was the character's point of view about the events that were happening in the story. I can think, what did Miss Barrington think about everything happening in the story? And I can infer what her own point of view was using these clues that I've mapped out in the story. So now that I've shown you how to map out a character's thoughts, words, and actions while you're reading, we can infer what their point of view was. The point of view goes back to what that character thinks, says, and does, and how that would affect the events of the story. So for example, on my chart here, and you have a copy of this chart on page 206 of your Turn practice book, or you can also complete it digitally as always. So I said that Miss Barrington thought that Grace would make a good president. And when I want to look for clues, that's me going back into the text and seeing where the text showed me that this is what Miss Barrington's point of view was. These are my clues. So for example, I said that Miss Barrington said that's a star-spangled idea on page 391. So on page 391, Miss Barrington said that she thought that it was a great idea for Grace to run for president. So that was something that she thought that helped me infer what her point of view was. So I've included on this chart a couple different characters. So I included Grace and Thomas. So during your second read, I want you to think about what Grace and Thomas's point of view might be. And I've given you a little bit of some guidelines and some hints here. So for example, I said that on page 391, Grace said that becoming president was going to be easy. And Thomas thinks that he's going to win the election. And I want you to look on page 399 to see why Thomas thought that he was going to win the election. So as you fill out this chart, I want you to remember, what is their point of view? What did they think about the events happening in the story? And how do you know that? That's going to be your clue. So let's go into some next steps. You're going to use that graphic organizer on page 209 of your turn or in your note catcher to identify the point of view of Thomas and Grace for President during your second read. You're going to do a respond to reading question of your choice and complete in your notebook, where you can always use that digital option. You're going to make sure that if you're on Google Classroom, you're doing the exit ticket for today's lesson. And you're going to complete page 208 in your Turn practice book. Don't forget, as always, I have extra Wonders practice assigned for today. And don't forget to be doing 15 minutes of iReady reading a day. I hope you guys have a great afternoon. I hope you guys enjoyed wearing crazy hats during learning today. And I will see you guys during class time.